Hi everyone, so today we're talking about Dexter New Blood episode 9. Oh, I can't believe that we're so close to the end of this show. It feels like very bittersweet. Like I'm so excited to see like the incredible ending that they've made, but I also don't want it to end. Let's just go into it. So we're gonna start out with summary like we have for the past videos. It opens up with Dexter and Harrison talking about the dark passenger. And through this, the way he's talking about it, the other scene that's going on is Dexter is talking about a clown named Wiggles. So he's kind of telling Harrison about what he does. So Dexter says that he has an urge to hurt people that is too strong to ignore, and that is what he calls the dark passenger. Harrison seems to completely understand what he's talking about and seems to relate. So Harrison asks, "Why are we like this?" And Dexter replies, "Both of our mothers were murdered in front of us." Harrison says how he felt so alone and that he couldn't talk to anybody. Dexter tells him about the code and how it channeled the dark passenger, that it made it so he could use it for good, or what he believes to be good, you know? It's an interesting show because it kind of like, it brings up a conversation about morality and death. Like, is it moral to kill people that have done bad things, or is it not moral? Like, is it bad to kill all across the board? Or is the world better off because of it? It's kind of a show where you're like, how is this made? How is this on TV? And it's crazy just how big it was, especially back then, and how big it is now. What he continues to talk about with Harrison, he says that the code does what the law failed to do, and that he fixes things. He tells Harrison that he kidnapped Wiggles, but Deb appears throughout this conversation and is like, protect him, don't tell him everything. So she's like, you can't tell Harrison about your sick ritual or that you kill people. Once you tell him that you kill people, there's no going back. What Dexter says instead is that he confronts them, scares them, shows them their victims and everything, and that keeps them away. And Harrison says to him, you're like Batman or something. So one thing is, I'm a little confused about the clown because that wasn't Dexter's first kill. Like, it's almost like what you would think it would be, but for those of you that are just watching New Blood and haven't seen the original season, his first kill, I'm pretty sure, was before he was even 20, or at least like super early 20s. And it was a woman, I believe she was a nurse, who would kill people. Next, Harrison asks if he thinks Kurt will come after them. Dexter says he's probably far away. I bet he's running by now. So Dexter gets rid of the body in the horse incinerator, the one from, you know, Kurt's guy, the working man that was supposed to hurt Dexter or whatever. So he puts him in the horse incinerator once again. Hopefully there's no screws this time. One thing I think about this is like, are there cameras near this thing? Because like, I mean, I guess even if there are cameras, like, it's small enough garbage bags that it's not like it's a whole body bag being disposed of. So I guess he wouldn't be suspected of anything. But just kind of interesting. Deb remarks, isn't it funny that you chop up bodies just like how your mother was chopped up? Dexter's like, and Harrison tries to kill people with a straight razor just like how his mother was killed. For some reason, I never put that together, even though that was how the ice truck killer killed people as well, who was Dexter's brother, Brian Moser. I highly suggest watching the first season if you haven't. I love that one. The first season I think is the best. But then the next scene is Angela doing more research on the Bay Harbor butcher. It seems like Angela's starting to connect the dots on him being the Bay Harbor butcher. And so you're kind of like, is she gonna catch him? What's gonna happen? We'll talk about this more later. I have some thoughts on it. So next, Dexter and Harrison open Christmas presents. It's Christmas Day. Well, there you go. So Dexter got Harrison a gun, so they go shooting. Harrison turns out to be a really good shot. Harrison asks him, is this what you use, you know, when you go after people like Wiggles? Dexter says, no, this is about blending in. All the kids at school have guns, you should have one too. Harrison says to him, was Kurt trying to kill me because you were going after him like you were with Wiggles? And Dexter tells him how Kurt is a serial killer who kills women. Dexter continues to say they can't tell Angela because he doesn't have any proof. And Harrison's like, I could testify, but Dexter's like, well, that would make Angela ask a lot of questions, like about the vigilante kind of thing. But Dexter says to Harrison that he has a plan to make it so Kurt can't hurt anyone else. As he says it in his head, he's like, ask me how, and ask me how you can help. So he wants Harrison to come to him basically with this. He feels like he can't just come out and say it. Harrison has to kind of like ask for him to tell him.
He doesn't end up asking Dexter, but he does give Dexter his Christmas gift, which is a drawing of Deb from his memory, which is pretty cool.
So then Dexter and Harrison go over to Angela's for Christmas and they exchange gifts. Angela seems shocked that Dexter is there and a little off, but she doesn't really seem afraid of him, at least not yet. So then Dexter says to Angela, you know, we're gonna have to decide what to do if our kids become an item, which you're like, they're an item, dude. Like, clearly there's something going on between them. And Dexter and Harrison seem really happy. Audrey comments to Harrison, you seem really happy. And he's like, yeah, like just, you know, being able to connect with my dads. Kurt comes to the door and they're like, what the heck is he doing here? We thought he was gonna leave. They have a conversation about sons on the holiday. Kurt's like, oh, wish I could have my son here on the holiday. And Dexter's like, yeah, my holiday would be ruined if Harrison wasn't here. Harrison seems, you know, scared. He's scared of Kurt. I mean, he tried to kill him the last time he was around, so of course he's gonna be scared. Right after Kurt leaves, Dexter and Harrison leave immediately. Angela and Audrey are like, that seemed weird. What's going on? Harrison says to Dexter, what if we do what you did with Wiggles to Kurt? Dexter is like, well, we need proof. These killers always keep mementos, even though they know it could get them caught. Like, Wiggles had photos. A lot of them keep photos or like clothing from their victims. So that is how Dexter confirms it's them. So then Angela goes to the local vet and asks who has used ketamine recently. And Jim is on that list. Red flags are starting to raise for her. Then Harrison and Dexter, they use a drone, the drone that Kurt got Harrison, and they try to find the place that Kurt keeps his mementos, because Kurt just kind of disappeared into the woods the other night. So they're like, he had to have gone somewhere, and that's probably where he keeps his mementos of his victims. Harrison reveals to Dexter, he was like, you were right about Ethan. I had it all planned out, and I even planned it out to make me look like a hero. Then Dexter says that he wanted to tell Harrison earlier, but he needed to try everything else first. So Harrison says that he's been thinking about Wiggles. He's like, scaring them or hurting them doesn't feel like justice. Dexter's like, so what does feel like justice? Harrison says that when he was 12, he had fantasies about finding the Trinity killer and killing him. And Deb still tells him not to say anything. She's like, don't say anything to Harrison. So Dexter just says to Harrison, I understand. On the drone footage, they find where Kurt disappears and they decide to go there later tonight. So then next, Angela listens to the Bay Harbor Butcher podcast episode on Mary Effing Kill. Dexter calls her to say that they won't be coming over. They're going on a night hike to check out a blood moon. Then Audrey interrupts her and they talk about if the Bay Harbor Butcher is alive, and that it was bold of Molly to say he was still alive so publicly. So Angela gives Molly a call and it goes to voicemail. So with this, you're like, could Molly be dead? What's going on? And if she is dead, does Angela think Dexter could have killed her because she might have been onto him? So next, Kurt is playing the runaway song that he always plays before his ritual. He's planning something. We don't know what it is. But then it cuts to him spraying gasoline all over Dexter's cabin and then lighting it on fire. Very bold, very bold. He stands on a post with his gun pointed at the door, hoping that they're gonna come out and he's gonna be able to shoot him. Then it cuts to Dexter and Harrison go to Kurt's bunker. There is a lock on the door that Dexter breaks and Harrison's like, can you teach me how to do that? And Dexter's like, yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like Dexter's hoping he can teach Harrison more. Dexter tells Harrison, you can keep watch out here, and Harrison's like, no, I need to see this. So Dexter's about to go down and they see that there's a camera there. Harrison's like, wait. But Dexter's like, you know what? Kurt needs to be caught. So he decides, like, you know what? His secrets are out. Yeah, I don't care if he sees us. So Kurt gets a notification that they're there. He sees them on the camera. Harrison kind of like gives him a nod, like, yeah, we're here. And he leaves the burning cabin. Then they get into the bunker, and when they're in there, there's a table, some stuff up, but then they go into another room, and it's filled with boxes. So this was one of my predictions, and I was right, so I feel pretty good about that. My predictions don't always come through with shows, but it is that Kurt keeps and preserves the victims like dolls. So each one is in a box that lights up, lining the hallway in a white dress with makeup done, perfectly preserved. And it is like tons of boxes. When they get to the end of the hallway, Molly is in one of those boxes. So Molly did end up being a victim in her own podcast, like she talked about, and it's just so sad. Like, I was like, dang it, like, why did he have to kill Molly? Harrison's, you know, he's looking around, he's disgusted. He's like, he's been getting away with this for years. And there are so many women dead until you found him, pointing to Dexter. And Harrison says to Dexter, you killed Wiggles, didn't you? Deb is appearing with Dexter. She's like, please don't. And Dexter's like, I did. And the Trinity killer. I did it for what he did to those women and for what he did to your mother. And Harrison says, Kurt needs to die too. And Dexter kisses Harrison on the forehead. During this, Dexter says that he killed the Trinity killer for what he did to Rita and those other women, but Dexter killed the Trinity killer before he knew that Trinity killed Rita. So in retrospect, I guess he could say it was for Rita, but I thought this was important to note, especially because had he killed Trinity sooner, instead of trying to understand Trinity and how he works and how he was able to kind of have a double life, Rita wouldn't have died and Harrison wouldn't have been born in blood. I'm not sure if this will come up later, you know, in the next episode, but I think it's important to note. Then Angela goes to the place Molly was staying and has the man who operates the inn open the safe. She discovers in the safe that it is the recorder that Molly used, and Angela's like, she would never leave this behind. If Molly really is dead and possibly murdered, does Angela think Dexter might have done it? Or does she think, you know, it's another one of Kurt's victims? Who knows? So then Harrison and Dexter go to Kurt's house and Dexter injects him with ketamine. So Dexter sets everything up with the plastic, the classic kill, and Harrison asks, how many times have you done this? And Dexter's like, probably hundreds, in the hundreds. And Harrison says, well, that means you probably saved thousands of innocent people. And Dexter, you know, he's like, in his head, he's like, he gets it, he understands. And Dexter says to Harrison, you don't have to be here for this. You can leave at any time. The first one you see is a lot. Dexter wakes Kurt. He says it's the end of the road. And also whispers in his ear, spare us how your father did this to you. Because they always talk about the parents. Most of the victims, they talk about the parents. And most of this show is about fathers and sons. Kurt says to him why he was doing it, and he says it's because he was saving the girls. It turns out that what he said about his dad was in fact true. And he says after giving the girls a nice room and warm meal, they still wanted to go out there into the terrible world, and that he was saving them and preserving them so that they were safe forever, was his view. And Dexter calls him out. He's like, no, I don't buy that. You love the power you had over them. It was the hunt, the capture, and the terror that they had. Kurt's like, wow, you know me so well, Jimbo. So what are you guys, like a vigilante team? And Kurt reveals that Dexter killed Matt to Harrison because, you know, that wasn't revealed yet. He just told him he's a killer. Dexter says, well, Matt fit the code. 5 people died because of him. So Dexter says when Matt was on his table, Matt blamed Kurt for everything he did, just like Kurt was doing with his father. Dexter tells Harrison that he doesn't have to watch the kill, but he says he wants to. And once it happens, I don't mean this in a pun type of way, but he looks like he just saw a ghost. He is anxious. He sees the blood kind of pool to the floor, and he has a flashback of Rita, what happened. Definitely seems to be anxious, seems to kind of be panicking, but it was a very gory scene, one of the most gory scenes you've seen of this, because they don't normally show all the detail, which we'll talk about later after the summary. Harrison is like, I'm gonna go get some air, like you said, and he stays out there until Dexter finishes. When he does, he hands Harrison the bags of the bodies and has Harrison put them in the RTD. And then they go to the incinerator. Harrison's like, how is this gonna be covered? Dexter's like, it looks like he ran. I mean, he ransacked his place, he had bags packed, and there's no money in his safe. Harrison's like, all right, yeah, that sounds, yeah, you knew he was gonna run. And Dexter was like, yeah, I did. Dexter asks how Harrison's dark passenger is, and Harrison says it's quiet. Dexter says that's how it works. That's how we keep it under control. And Harrison says, and the world is a better place for it. They go back to the house to discover it burned to the ground. Angela's there, they have fire trucks there, they have people putting out the fire still, kind of seeing if they can discover anything, and Dexter is like, this was Kurt's last try at revenge. So Angela asks Jim questions. She's like, where were you? Why didn't you answer my calls? And what time did you leave? Dexter says that he took Harrison to see the blood moon, like he said to her before. He said he turned his phone off to be more present, and that he left at 10 p.m., took the RTD, and lost track of time. Audrey says that they need to stay with them. They do. And when they get to the house, Angela opens a letter, presumably from Kurt. It says, Jim killed Matt Caldwell with the titanium screws from his leg. One question I have is, how many titanium screws does he have? Because it was like, it seemed like he had some for himself, then he had some for Dexter, and now he has some for Angela. Like, how many screws are there? I'm very confused. I'm not a doctor though, but let's talk about episode 10, the preview. I'm just gonna say what happened in the preview. So Angela says there's evidence the fire was arson, and asks if there's anyone he crossed recently. Dexter's like, no one comes to mind, as he's having flashbacks of everyone that he's crossed. He says to Angela that he is a phoenix and that he will rise from the ashes, and kisses her on the forehead. Which, does he only kiss the people that truly accept him on the forehead? It seems like he doesn't kiss people on the forehead often. So does this possibly mean that Angela confronts him about being the Bay Harbor butcher but accepts him? Kind of something we can talk about. Then Audrey says to Harrison her mom won't tell her what's happening. Dexter says to Harrison, the world needs us. It looks like they're at the police station. When he says the world needs us, does this mean another kill will happen with them? Deb says, I trusted you, and it looks like they're almost in a, like an interrogation place or some sort of cellar. It looks like it's in the ground, it's dark. Then Angela is seen looking through a place, and by the plastic curtains that she's going through, it looks like she found Kurt's lair. She's also seen outside in the woods saying she needs all the backup she can get. So was she tipped off by Dexter about the woods, or could Molly have had it on her podcast with the location? Like, how did she find it? And then we also see Dexter running through the woods. He says, you'll see what real evil looks like. It looks like he's also getting a mugshot taken, but it could just be a striped wall behind him, but the way he turns almost looks like a mugshot. Does this mean he gets caught? We don't know. So now on to theories. So one theory that the show has winked at multiple times is that Angela will catch Dexter. Angela's hard to read. She doesn't really seem afraid of Jim that I can see. She may not want to date him anymore, but she doesn't seem afraid. She does seem to be cautious, but not afraid. Otherwise, I feel like if she were afraid, she would find a way to send him and Harrison to the inn, at least if she was afraid for her own safety. Maybe it's because she doesn't want him to think that she's onto him. Maybe she's okay with him being the Bay Harbor butcher. After all, he only kills guilty people. She definitely seems to know that Jim's the Bay Harbor butcher, especially with the syringe marks connection, but it doesn't look like she has enough evidence to convict him or that would hold up in court, especially with how clean Dexter is and how he disposes of the body. There wouldn't be forensic evidence that would tie him to the kills, only the pattern of the syringe marks, at least at this point. I think the only way she'd be able to get it to court is possibly a camera near the incinerator. Even the screws might not be enough. Like, they can't prove that they were in the incinerator. They could prove that it was Matt's if there's a serial number on it, but there would still need to be more evidence to connect Dexter to the crime, at least in my opinion. So it is possible that she may catch him, especially if there is more evidence, maybe some drone footage by chance. Or maybe Batista wasn't just in the series for one episode. That might be enough to catch Dexter, so we'll just have to see.
One other thing to note is it's entirely possible that they catch Dexter with some forensic evidence from Kurt's lair, but I don't know if it'll be enough to tie him to being the Bay Harbor butcher. So they could definitely catch him for Kurt's murder, possibly, but I don't know if it's enough to tie him to being the Bay Harbor butcher.
Another reason that Angela might accept Dexter rather than want to, turn him in is because he killed Kurt, who killed Iris, which brings Iris some justice. Who knows? So some things, I did read an article and I thought this was interesting with the writer of the show. So they talked about how the Dexter New Blood ending will be like Chekhov. I think I'm saying that right, I hope so. So Anton Chekhov is famous for a lot of dramatic theories. Chekhov's gun means any gun introduced early in a story will be fired at some point. Phillips had another Chekhov theory. Phillips is the writer of the show. Fun fact, he also wrote episodes 1 through 4 and just hated the rest of the series and did not like how it ended at all. So it's almost like he came back to kind of like resurrect the show in a way. So it's clear to me at this point that my camera hates me, but we're just going to keep going because it just overheats like nothing else. We were talking about Clyde Phillips. So he was one of the original writers on the shows. He wrote seasons 1 through 4 and then left after that. And he said that he used to call one of the producers and fire them even though he was already gone, and just say that he did not like how the show was going, and he also did not like the finale at all, which a lot of people did not like the finale. I think it's like one of the top 10 shows with the worst finales. Phillips said is, I'm going to quote Chekhov. Chekhov said that the ending should be surprising yet inevitable. And he said ours is surprising, inevitable, and satisfying. The audience will be satisfied with the end while their own brains are exploding at the same time. Another thing they talked about in this article is the Dexter New Blood ending may not be the end. What he said is, let me say this to answer that. Never say never. I could have said yes or no. I'm saying never say never. Anything can happen, and I'm not going to commit to the fact that this is the absolute end of the franchise. I think that's a pretty revealing answer. So what I think is yes, but I think if the series is continued, it will be through Harrison, hence why they call it New Blood. One interesting thing as well is, according to this article, New Blood wasn't the first time a new series of Dexter was pitched, because Showtime really wanted the Dexter cast back together. But Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter, actually refused the other pitches. Him saying yes to the show, one, I think the show has already been so good, and I feel like the ending will really make or break it. Or not necessarily break it, but I think if the ending's good, it will really make it amazing. This makes me feel like the ending is going to be good. You have one of the original writers, and it seems like it would have had to have been approved by Michael C. Hall, which, he knows Dexter better than anybody. He's played him for all these years. It's also funny because people always joke, I see interviews of him and all the comments that I see usually are like, wow, Dexter is really good at pretending to be Michael C. Hall, because their personalities are so similar. Another thing is, having Deb in his head was Michael C. Hall's idea, so I thought that was kind of cool. Then another thing that came up, especially when Dexter and Harrison were talking in the beginning and how he talks about being born in blood, is he going to mention that he is a brother to Harrison? Because the ice truck killer is mentioned in Molly's podcast, but will it ever be discussed? Brian was also born in blood, but he killed women. So if Harrison doesn't kill how Dexter does, could he turn out like Brian? And does he even want to kill? You know what I mean? Because
Harrison did seem a little squeamish when Dexter was killing, but was that just because it was his first time? Because it definitely did seem like his first time. I used to have the theory that Harrison has killed before, but just from the way he reacted to it and reacted to the blood, I feel like he hasn't. That's just what I think, so I feel like those theories have been like squashed by that scene. And another thing is Harrison, his motive behind it, if he does choose to be like Dexter, seems to be that he wants the world to be a better place. That's what he comments throughout all of it, is he's like, well, you're making the world a better place. I mean, technically, even with Ethan did have a kill list and he did want to hurt people. So there's that. But with Harrison wanting the world to be a better place, is that enough for Harrison to be a serial killer like Dexter? And is his dark passenger as strong as Dexter's? Like, I think one thing to think about is, like, you know, they say Dexter is a sociopath or a psychopath. I mean, we kind of talked about that in my last video about he might actually have obsessive compulsion disorder with killing people. Is Harrison, you know, a sociopath? I don't know if he is necessarily. Or is it like kind of the OCD thing that Dexter has? Is he really cut out to be like Dexter? Does he want to do it? Or is his dark passenger just kind of like gone? Like, I think there are some questions, like, just because of this episode, you know, Dexter showing Harrison kind of how he does things, does that mean that Harrison will be the same? It doesn't necessarily, you know what I mean? So we'll just have to see in the next episode. The other thing was, this was the first time in the show's history, at least from what I remember, that it's shown how graphic the ritual is. Like, they are up close, that I have to tell myself that it's all fake, otherwise I would be just so disgusted. It's shown how graphic the ritual is, and I feel like they filmed it this way so we could really see how Harrison is seeing it for the first time. Like, we're really seeing it through Harrison's point of view, and it's graphic. Like, I think that's why the question for me kind of came up, like, does Harrison want to be like Dexter? Does he want to be a vigilante? Is this what he really wants? Like, I did want to look up something because they talk about the blood moon in this episode. I didn't know if a lot of the episodes, like the white buck or the white stag, for example, had a lot of meaning to it. So I wanted to see, you know, what the blood moon is. I know, like, there are things where it has to do with, like, Christianity. Okay, so I did find an article. I'll link it down below if you guys want to read it. This is like the spiritual side. So on this website, the spiritual version of their meaning and take on the red moon or the blood moon. It's the opening of the path to exploring what is often referred to as our darker side, emotions such as rage, shame, and grief, which who do we know that feels a lot of those? Harrison. So I feel like it's interesting, all the like parallels and like metaphors or analogies that they put into the show. Like, the symbols are very poetic, and if you catch them, like, they have a deeper meaning. So with Harrison, it was like, you know, he has felt a lot of rage, he feels shame about, you know, how he feels inside, and he's probably felt a lot of grief about his mom. One of the other things it says is blood moons and their spiritual meaning are a reminder that there is immense power and intelligence that can be found in the shadows if only we have the courage to explore with discernment and free from judgment, which I feel like the blood moon just fit that episode so well. Like, it's like, that's pretty much exactly what happened. So with the blood moon, it was like Harrison finally had to, like, he saw everything that, you know, his dad does. Dexter obviously uses his rage, shame, and grief and says that it's his dark passenger. I just feel like that's cool with the blood moon, putting that in there. I feel like it fits the show so well and fit that episode so well, and it's just so poetic. They really have done such a good job with the show with elements like that, and I'm so excited to see how it ends. I'm curious how it's going to end. I mean, I think with the ending and just how they've described it with the writers, I think Dexter's probably caught. It's the end for Dexter, but I don't think it's the end for Harrison, whatever that may mean. Yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, and we'll talk about episode 10 in my reaction. Bye!